Welcome to the Honest to Goodness podcast,
where we promise to be more than honest
and point to his goodness.
Welcome back to season 2 of the Honest to Goodness podcast. Oh my gosh, you guys. Yeah. Are we really doing this?
We are really doing this.
We're doing
Finally.
it.
And I feel like to kick off season 2, we had to pick a new location.
One room over.
One room over. So typically we are typically in the living room, which is right over there, and we moved over a room.
Yes.
So giving you guys a little bit of a new scenery if you're watching via YouTube.
True. The best conversations happen in the kitchen.
Well, this is where the reason that, exactly. That's the reason why we decided to start season 2 here, because this is where it really all originated, was around this table.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Yeah.
So we wanted to, bring it back.
Yeah.
Bring it right on back.
Yeah.
To its roots.
So it has been, you said 4 months?
4 months.
Since we recorded.
Yeah.
Season
and
1.
not just since we've recorded, but since really we've been together in each other's presence as a trio.
As a trio.
Wow.
Once.
Well, the wedding.
Oh, that's true.
Twice.
I was gonna say, and we did do lunch.
Yeah, that was the one time.
Oh, the one.
Oh, that
yeah,
was
one
the
time.
ones. Okay.
Shoot,
Yeah.
okay.
So we have been really terrible about getting together in the off season. However, there has been a lot of life changes
Yeah.
since all of season 1 ended.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we wanted to kind of do a little recap of what happened in the off season between all of us, and just, talk about just openly, like how we would, because literally we haven't really caught up.
No.
So talk about openly what has been going on in our lives, and maybe just do a brief little, recap of what's been going on in the last 4 months, and then like what the Lord, like what's a theme or what's a thread that the Lord has really impressed upon your heart during these 4 months off.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be anything crazy or long, but I mean, we want to keep this episode fairly short so that we can, get into the meat. We have lots of great ideas for the rest of the season. So who would like to kick us off? Nicole, I know you said you had a question.
Oh, okay. So my question is kind of unrelated at this point. But
So should we do the question later?
well, okay,
Detour.
let's just rewind a little
Okay,
bit,
rewind.
because it's been really difficult for us to get together.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
yes.
so my question was, how do you know when it's like the enemy that's halting plans, or if it's the Lord?
Mm.
Like, how would you answer that? Because we've had so many roadblocks, and I'm like, I think we've all been like, is that you,
Yeah.
God, or is this, the schemes of the enemy? So how would you answer that question?
Rebecca.
I have asked, actually in the last 4 months, I've asked the Lord a lot of questions, and then I'll journal them. And then I find myself asking, okay, now how do I find the answer to this? And so the way that lately, I don't know if there's actually a right answer, and one good answer to default to when you don't know is to say, I don't know, and I don't think I will know. But if the Lord gives you evidence of his presence or his peace, I think then I think if he doesn't want you to move forward with something, he will send you multiple messages. And that's what I've been in the prophets in this season of life. And he gives opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to, like, the Israelites to, obey him or whatever his commands were. And he repeats himself. So, and then I also think if you suspect the enemy is trying to halt your plans, then you invite God into those plans and ask him very obvious, practical things like, Lord, if we're supposed to move forward in this decision or this process or this thing, please make it clear and make the way easier, but if I'm not supposed to move forward in this, please send as many people or, readings or whatever. I'm going to keep my eyes and my ears open to listen, and I'm going to be unbiased about this. Like, if I see X after X after X, then, I'm going to do it. And Gideon did that in the Bible. He needed answers from the Lord, and the Lord gave him an answer, but he needed to double check. And so he threw his fleece, and people still say that, throw your fleece, which for Christians, it's a little bit Christianese, but it's throw your fleece. Well, what does that mean? Well, he threw a fleece out the window and kind of put some terms on it, and said, Lord, if this is wet with dew, then if it's dry, then this. And then he got his answer, but then he did it again. He did it again. And the Lord was patient with him. And he was like, okay, I met your terms. I give you your answer, and I will do it again. But he switched the terms over, and he's like, you know what I mean? This time, let it be dry, and so we can invite the Lord in practical ways, because he knows our limitations, to asking these questions. And maybe he even gives us our creativity to invite him into that. Now, testing the Lord is never a good thing. However, inviting him into a process, I think you're okay. I think he knows our hearts.
Mm-hmm. I think that too, we oftentimes give the enemy more power and more clout than he actually deserves when it comes to situations too. We're the enemy's totally trying to, when sometimes it really is the testing of the Lord, how badly do you want this? How, is your heart truly in this? What's the motivation of your heart? And so I think oftentimes we diffuse things to the enemy because it's easier than actually looking in.
It's really good.
So that's a good question, but let's move on. That was a heavy one.
Deep.
Such a subtle.
I told you guys I had a good question.
You did. Okay, Nicole, since you had a huge, both of you really truly had very large life changes within the last 4 months. Let's start with you, and I'd love to hear from you about obviously what happened, what major event took place, and how has the Lord been refining your heart in this off season?
Well, I had a baby. So that was a huge life event.
Quite a bit.
And so it's really cool, looking back at the beginning of our podcast. I was pregnant, early on in my pregnancy. I think when we began the podcast. Because I didn't even announce it. We were trying to hide it.
Yes.
All the pictures.
Nicole would only wear black.
Overalls, I think, in every picture.
Had to do a little bit of editing.
I was like, oh my gosh, people are gonna know. You guys are like, no. So I had a baby. That's been amazing. His name's Gates Samuel, and
perfect.
He's just the best thing ever. So that's been my major life change. And so now, here we are in this new chapter of life as a mom of 3. As a mom of kids with a big age gap, that's been really different for me, having a 10-year-old and then a newborn. But what a gift and a blessing it is to get to, be a mom again with newfound perspective. And so I think, I haven't had a lot of time to prepare for this podcast just because my family's been sick the past week. I have a baby. There's just so much going on with the kids' activities, but I think that's the season of life that God just has me in right now. Right. And so I feel like he's like, I will still meet you right here. Yeah. In last season, I had hours on end for scripture, for journaling, for prayer. And that was such a rich, beautiful season that I'm like, thank you, God, for putting me on bed rest, because if I wasn't, we would have never had that communion. Yeah. But now can
you go ahead. Go back and just talk a little bit about, for those that don't follow you on social media,
why wouldn't you?
But
so
don't
confused.
know about that story. Can you talk a little bit about what you're talking about? Why were you put on bed rest, and then what you did during that time?
Yeah. So I got pregnant, a surprise 3rd pregnancy. I lost a baby in 2021, and we just shut the door to ever having any more kids. And then last year in January, I found out I was pregnant, which was just such a huge shock to my husband and I. And then
the ages of your kids are what?
Well, now they're 10, 7, and then 4 months. But so we were just moving on with big kid life, and it was a really cool season to be in. You can just pick up and go and do whatever you want. So anyway, I was nervous. It was a a scary pregnancy, especially in the beginning, because, you know, the first trimester is always just, there's a lot of unknowns. And so I got to 20 weeks and I announced it to the world, I think on this podcast as well. And then literally right after that appointment, or right after the announcement, I found out that my cervix had like cut into half of what it should be. So I had to get a cerclage, which is like a cervical stitch. But that procedure was really scary just because they didn't know if it would work. There was just a lot of unknowns surrounding that whole thing. So it was a season of bed rest from pretty much 20 weeks on, just preparing for a baby to come prematurely. And I remember, I think you, Tessa, said it'll be so like God to make it way past when he's full term, and he did it. Like God delivered him at 38 weeks and 4 days, you know, and I think a baby can be born at 36 weeks with no complications. 36
viability is 26,
but yeah, like 36 weeks are like you can have a baby anytime. And so he came at 38 weeks. So it's just like God to do it. But in that season from 21 weeks to 38, I rested nonstop, just really sat and laid down as much as possible. Really didn't have any normal summer, so to speak. It was spent at home on my back porch, on the couch. But in that season, I developed a more intimate relationship with the Lord, and we just had time together. And I also took a social media break last summer, so truly I feel like my eyes were on the Lord, and it just was one of the best, most rich seasons ever. And that wouldn't have happened if he didn't put me in the circumstance that he did.
I remember you saying to me, you're like, whenever I felt the urge to scroll, I opened my Bible. And how that change of really perspective opened your eyes to, you know, like a relationship with the Lord that you've never had before.
And I think too, he used that season, the summer, to just heal me in so many ways. You know, before that, and still, you know, I struggle with some anxiety here and there, but it was like he used that to just fill me with truth, to where it's like, you know, we'll have shaky seasons, but at the end of the day, like, the truth is so embedded now. It's like my house is built on the
I was just gonna say that.
yeah. So and I remember years ago, you know, I talked to another mentor of mine, and I was just like falling apart over anxiety, and she's like, Nicole, this is your chance to build your house on the and she was like, don't get blown over anymore. And it's like year after year, season after season, I just see how just the Lord has strengthened me. So just so grateful for that season. But now here we are in this new one. And like I was just saying, the perspective shift of being a mom, you know, now to a 4-month-old when I have a 10-year-old is just amazing. I think the Lord has shown me that time is fleeting, you know, so slow down and enjoy every single like nap trap, every single feed, every single, you know, little milestone. It's like, I just want to savor this because it's not going to be forever. And I think that's the difference now, is like, now I know that. Yeah, have that perspective. And, you know, I just stopped above able. So that's been another huge life change. And I feel like the Lord is calling me to be a mom first, and really showing me what like sacrificial love looks like. And I think nothing compares to motherhood.
Well, you had said that something that you had said to the Lord, because you really wanted a third baby, right? And you had said to the Lord, if I ever get pregnant again and have another baby, like, I'll give it all up, right? That was something that you said and that you spoke. And talk about that, like how that conviction really changed the course of like what you're doing now.
Yeah, so Tessa's right. I would say that, never thinking I'd have another baby. And then God was like, well, hold my beer because here's another baby. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, I guess you're really doing it. And so, you know, I felt like he was like, remember, he kept reminding me, you know, like, remember when you said, will you do it? And so I did it. and here I am. And I feel like, in this season of life, I've never been like a stay-at-home mom, really anything near a stay-at-home mom. I've always worked outside of the home or been busy with Above Able. So now, the days look so different. There's not a large audience. There's not status behind being, a mom. But I feel like the Lord is like, this is kingdom work, though. All these things.
I just picture like the angels in heaven being your grand audience now, like paying way more attention to what you're doing. Like your following just like drastically grew, but you can't see it.
Wow,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh, look at the watery eyes.
Yes, I can't. No, eye
Yeah.
contact. So yeah, I just feel like, this is kingdom work in a whole new way, and I'm just so grateful. I know this season will also pass very quickly. In 5 years, Gates will be in kindergarten, and we'll be crying again because it'll be a whole new shift in life. Yeah, but I will say too, during pregnancy, there was a lot that the Lord taught me, but there are some specific themes, and I think one of those that I feel like I learned from you guys is just like we're responsible for the words that we accept and what we speak over our lives. And I think that's so huge. And I guess that just really resonated with me during that pregnancy because I just had to speak life, and I had to have women around me also doing the same. And it was like anytime I was down, it was like encouragement, truth in scripture, all these things. And we saw how the Lord carried this whole thing through. And I'm not saying that he wouldn't have if we didn't do that, but I'm just saying like it makes a difference. And so being specific in prayer, speaking life over yourself and your family is just so important. Yeah, so that's my update, girls.
Well, we're going to go into detail in another episode, just more about that story, but we'll leave it at that for now. But Rebecca, you've had quite a bit of change in your life as well. You've got 2 adult kids and ish, right? I mean, yes, they are. They are legal adults. And then you've got one that's at home still, 12. She's 11? She's 11. But you just had a wedding that you were not shooting, that you were not photographing. You had a son get married. And so that's been a huge change. So tell us about just everything that was going on in the off season.
So small little caveat there. I did photograph the first 4 hours of that. Control issues. But yeah, I did. My son got married. We talked a lot about your pregnancy and Grant's engagement and all of that last season. And in our off season, Nicole had a baby, and that heralded the off season. And Grant got married a month later, and I got to see you guys, and it was awesome. And now Grant and Elena have my granddaughter on the way. They're expecting that, so I'm entering totally. And so it's so funny when you were listing off the ages, Nicole, of your kids, because I'm like, Grant turned 10, and Evelyn turned 7, and Avery was a baby. So funny that the Lord goes before us, because you asked me so many years ago, 3-4 years ago, to be your spiritual mentor, and we had no idea Gates was coming on the scene. And like literally the mapping of my family and the pattern of it in front of yours is just comical almost. But yeah, so yeah, all our families are growing in that sense. And so while you have your youngest and I'll have my grandchild, we can have play dates together. And yet we're like 4 years apart in age. But yeah, so it was really, really good. In this season for me, I've had a lot of quiet time. First, self-implemented. Like I felt cautious in even my friendships with you guys and others, that I was elevating a lot of the dialogue with others over my dialogue with the Lord. And so I needed to seek him genuinely in all things first. And so I pulled back a lot from my social communication, like not entirely at all, but I just got a little more quiet on my phone and not sending half as many voice texts and things like that because I was in a listening and learning season, I think. And it is interesting because it had a lot of ups and downs and confusion and re-navigating. And also I've learned a lot about as I've drawn nearer to the Lord, I feel like I've learned a lot about him that I formerly believed to be true that I no longer believe to be true, which is kind of alarming, but it also shows that as you pursue the Lord, he will reveal more of his truth to you, like as you draw near. And that he has done. And it's hard to really break up with what you've professed before. And so my understanding is fluid with him. And the more that I learn about the Father, especially, the more ignorant I am willing to acknowledge myself to be, because we are so far from him, so far from him. But the parts that we can be certain of are the parts that he shared through his son in the character of Jesus, because he was truly man. So I lean on that a lot because I can understand that. And I think he knew that. I think he knew we needed him in a fleshly form to be able to relate and trust and fully believe that he is truth and what he has for us is true and good. And so I lean on my understanding of Jesus. I also lean now on my ignorance of the Father and being okay. I think I've referenced with both of you, I know more recently with you, Nicole, that I don't want to be one of Job's friends. And so Job's friends just like keep reciting what they know to be true of his circumstances, that he had to have done X, Y, or Z, or he has to have a heart posture like this or that, and that the Father operates this way and that way. And what they say when you read in the book of Job and their responses to his grief of losing like everything sounds good. It sounds like it makes sense. It sounds Christianese, it sounds solid. And then the Lord speaks in the last few chapters, and you're like, even Job himself is like speechless, and like I shared with you yesterday the scripture with Isaiah. Isaiah, when he saw God in his vision, he said, I have a filthy, I'm ruined. I have filthy lips, and I live among people with filthy lips. I am unclean, and now I have looked upon the face of God. And God sends one of his seraphim with a burning coal and puts it on his lips and says, now you are clean. And then God asks a question and said, I need to send someone who will go. And Isaiah, seeing the glory of God and now feeling restored, says, send me. I will go, send me. And so, but what I learned most in that is like humility is crucial. And we as a people, especially in the time, in time and space that we were placed as Americans in 2025 right now, and the culture that we experience, we have such a false entitlement by comparison to who God is. And so I'm just praying for the Lord to break me of that entitlement I feel like I inherited at birth, and to restore a perspective of his holiness, so much so that my life is a response in reverence and not in any pride whatsoever. So that's, we could have a whole episode dedicated to like what he taught me, but that's the biggest lesson that I've learned in this season is how holy the Father is, and studying the Trinity too. It's been really, really fun. So yeah.
So good. Thank you. Like, can't go after that.
Well, okay, I don't know if you all knew this. I feel like we've referenced him often, but last season, Tessa's son Zion was here at like all of our podcast recordings. He was our little mascot. Yeah, he'd crawl. Yes, but now he's in school. So the season has changed. So that's just one of the many things that you have experienced in the last couple months, Tessa. So why don't you give us an update on just what's been going on?
Yeah, I don't feel like I've had, I mean, that was probably my biggest transition, which really in the whole scheme of things, it's a really big transition. I mean, being a stay-at-home mom for 12 years, right? Where somebody is always home, to now nobody being at home for majority of the day, was a huge transition, and one that I don't think I allowed myself the grace to have, like to really let myself have it. And I actually, I know that I've told you guys this off record, but just like how coming on to this season, I feel like I almost feel less qualified coming into this season than I did. Not that I felt super qualified for season 1, but it's just a lot of stuff transpired in the last 4 months, that has left me feeling shaky, has left me feeling like really insecure about my relationship with the Lord and my relationship with friends, and I mean just like everything. Um and I honestly was like, I don't even know how to come on here and like not give advice, but even share what's going on in my life when I feel uncertain about what's going on in my life and in my walk with the Lord. And I mean, to be completely transparent, like for, I don't know, 2, maybe almost 3 months, like I wanted nothing to do with the Lord. Which is just interesting that it happened after the season ended, but truly, like there was a point where I was like, I completely isolated myself from everyone. I mean, from you guys, from church family, from my own self. I mean, just numbing out, numbing out for the sake of numbing out, because I'm not going to go into it, but like something occurred in my personal life that really shook me, that maybe someday down the road I'll be able to talk more about. But it was this awakening moment for me in a sense, but it was also an incredibly stripping moment where all of a sudden I not only lost trust in some of my closest one of my closest relationships, but in myself and in the Lord. And I think in that, I just didn't know, I didn't feel safe. I no longer felt safe. Nobody felt safe. The only person that really felt safe to me was my husband. But even him, he was like, I don't even know what to do with this like version of you, just because I felt I was just a mess all the time. Like I just was constantly like, what am I doing? What is this life? What is this? Like just kind of really, really rocked in a lot of ways. And so I completely took a step back from a lot of things, a lot of, like we often do when we experience a traumatic event. A very natural physiological response is to isolate. And so that's what I did. Withdrew. I didn't know how else to be. And I feel like finally now, as yeah, I feel like finally now I am at a place where the Lord has just been so kind, and he's been so patient to yeah. So it's been a journey, but it's also been like a really good, like I have just been like rediscovering his love, like his abundant, rich, gentle, never-ending love. And it's just so like the Lord, because I didn't know where to start. You guys, I literally put my Bible down. Like I would pick it up and I would read for the sake of reading, but I would
almost be angry while I was reading for all these months. And I was one day cleaning the house, and I was dusting off some of my bookshelves in my office. And as I took the stack of books off my shelf, I looked at one of the books, and I said, "Oh, Experiencing the Father's Embrace" was this book I had gotten from my sister 10 years ago, I want to say, that completely changed her life. And I think I'd started and stopped it 2 times throughout that 10 years, never finished it. And I said, I just need to get into something. I need to get into something because I need to get out of here. And so I started reading this book. And simultaneously, as I started reading this book by Jack Frost, I started reading 1 Corinthians. I just was like, I need to get in somewhere. And I think I was one of those, I just flipped my Bible open and I fell to 1 Corinthians, and I just started reading as I was simultaneously reading this book, Experiencing the Father's Embrace. And it was like everything that I was experiencing in my day to day with the hurt and the trauma and everything, like this book was speaking to. And I mean, it's all about experiencing for yourself the Father's love for you. And so as I'm reading this, I start reading 1 Corinthians 13. And I'm going to open it up and I'm going to read it because I love the Passion Translation. I know that there are some people that find it like it's heresy or something. I don't know, but not me. I think it's so beautiful. And I think the way that the language is worded, it just moves so differently. And, but this was what I was reading one morning, and my lens towards the Father shifted like completely. And so I'm going to start 1 Corinthians 13 at 4, verse 4. And we all know this verse, but just listen. Love is large and incredibly patient. Love is gentle and consistently kind to all. It refuses to be jealous when blessing comes to someone else. Love does not brag about one's achievements nor inflate its own importance. Love does not traffic in shame and disrespect, nor selfishly seek its own honor. Love is not easily irritated or quick to take offense. Love joyfully celebrates honesty and finds no delight in what is wrong. Love is a safe place of shelter, for it never stops believing the best for others. Love never takes failure as defeat, for it never gives up. And then it says, love never stops loving. And so I sat there and I was like, I don't know this kind of love for myself. Like I've never experienced this kind of love in the flesh, right? Like we are loved by our parents and we're loved by our spouse and we're loved by our friends, but it's never like this kind of love. And I started asking myself the question, like, and just saying to the Lord, okay, what if I parented out of my experience of your love versus my experience of my father and my mother's love? Like, what if I could love my spouse in the way that you love me and my experience of your love versus how I saw it modeled to me? And I just started being like, okay, this is it. Like, this is, and then the Lord really rocked me and he challenged me and he said, yes. And Tessa, you have been asking for the fruit of my love when all I've wanted you to ask is for the root of my love. Right? Because the love is the root of it all. Like, God is love. And if God is love, then everything else falls into place, right? All the fruits of the Spirit fall into place, and we get to experience and receive those things: love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, self-control. We get to experience all the fruits of his love instead of chasing after the fruit. And so I have just been like sitting in this place of like asking every day, Lord, I want to experience your love to a degree that I have never experienced it before. And I want to not chase after anything else. Like nothing else matters. At the end of the day, nothing else matters. And we let all the gifts and all the things that seem flashy and all of the achievements, all the things that we do in the Christian faith
to become better, to be a better person, I have to do X, Y, and Z. We let those things lead and guide us instead of just being like, I'm going to be, and that's what I've been working on in counseling, is like, who are you, Tessa? And are you okay with just being you instead of just doing all the time? As my sister said, she goes, we've become more accustomed to being human doings than human beings, right? Where we can just be who we were created to be instead of having to do to be. So it's been.
I would drop my mic, but I don't want to break it. Well, we need to leave that goodness sitting there without adding to it. And I'm so excited to be back with the two of you talking about what matters. Don't make me cry, right? Okay, well,
We have a great episode coming up
yeah.
next.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. You guys, thanks for listening. We are always so honored to have everybody that chooses to spend their next however long with us. So until next time. Peace out.